Hi, welcome to this module in our titration video series. We're going to be looking at agent installation. I'm Tim and I'm joined by Remi today. So let's get started. Well, if we remember earlier, we were talking about how using titration we get visibility into workloads across all different types of environments, whether that is on premises, whether that's in the cloud, whether it's a bare metal, virtual machine, or container. And the way that we achieve that is by deploying a very small, lightweight agent that sits there at the OS level, capturing metadata about the flows going in and out of that device, the processes that those flows are related to, and the behavior of those processes themselves. So to stream that data, we obviously need to get that agent installed. And this whole session is going to be about exactly how we can deploy those agents, both on the Linux side and on the Windows side of the house.
Okay, just before we start, do I have one agent per cloud and one different thing I have to deploy everywhere? How does that work just overall?
I wish it was that complicated. So, it's
Job
actually,
protection, Tim?
yeah, it would help me keep my job. No, unfortunately, or fortunately enough, there is only two different types of agents that you need to choose around. Do you want to use a visibility agent or an enforcement agent? And is it going to be a Windows agent or a Linux agent? You don't need to tell me that you're using CentOS or you're using Red Hat or Ubuntu. We're going to deliver you the same installation script which will automatically work out exactly what package we should install on that workload.
That sounds pretty easy.
Yep. So as the network administrator or the sysadmin or the application developer, it really is not that difficult to get this agent deployed on the workload. We're going to talk a little bit about the dependencies that are required, the communication channels that we necessitate are opened, and exactly what commands you would execute to actually install that agent.
So you mean, is this agent listening on any port? Is that what you're trying to prepare me for?
Luckily enough, again, no. The answer is no. So as you can see by demonstrated in this diagram, the communication from the titration agent to the titration cluster is always initiated in an outbound fashion from that agent. So we're not sat there listening on any sockets, and we're not asking you to open any inbound firewall rules to those workloads. The only firewall we're going to be asking you to look at is exactly how you want this agent to communicate to the titration cluster.
Sounds good.
Now, do you think we require VPNs or tunnels or any of that shenanigans?
I think much better layer 2 adjacency.
I would don't even get me started on that. No, luckily enough, in this setup, all that we require is simple IP connectivity from the agent itself towards the titration cluster. Whether that's an on-prem cluster talking to an on-prem agent talking to an on-premises cluster, or a cloud-based agent talking to a titration as a service instance in the cloud, there is nothing that you need to consider differently. It's always outbound communication.
Okay.
So
as usual, you have to prove it.
I'm going to have to prove it to you, Remi. I know. So we generate that outbound connection to bring up the control channel with the titration cluster. But obviously, because of the fact that we know that titration is going to be pushing policy back down to that workload, there clearly has to be a bidirectional communication, and that happens inside that control channel. So despite the fact that we open up and initiate in one direction, we still have the capability to continue sending configuration back down to that agent.
That seems like dark magic, but
yeah,
okay.
It seems easy enough at least. It always looks easy from the outside. So let's walk into a little bit about this software agent. So, like I mentioned, the goal with titration is always to begin with visibility, right? You can't secure what you can't see. So to that end, we have a huge amount of different sensors that you can deploy in your environment. You know, probably 80% of an environment that we walk into is going to be covered by Windows, by Linux. But it certainly is not every type of operating system we see out there. And even inside Linux and Windows, there are variations around those operating systems. So
don't tell me.
You can see some of the names up here. This is not an exhaustive list. There is a datasheet on cisco.com that will give you the complete list of agents that we can deploy out there. But the goal really is to get a very large array of agents deployed into your environment, as far and as wide as possible.
Okay. Now, without going into all the detailed different versions, are you one of those companies that provide me an agent only for the latest and greatest version of an OS, or do you have some form of backward compatibility for older systems?
So the thing is, we all live in the real world. It would be fantastic if every application developer was using the latest and greatest version of the operating system available to them, but frankly, that's just not possible. And there's always applications where it simply will be impossible to ever upgrade the operating system. What if you don't even have access to that operating system in the way that you would like? So we try to maintain as much backwards compatibility as we can, including right now some of our agents supporting operating systems that are way outside of the typical end of life of what the vendor of that operating system supports.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So I can take my old dinosaurs that run in a corner and I can actually deploy agents within reason, obviously. I mean,
within some level of reason.
I mean, when I ask you for Solaris 1, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that we've never had the request for that. Yeah, so the goal is to just get that agent out there to all of your workloads. Cloud workload protection, what Tetration is doing, it's not about protecting the latest and greatest. It's not just about protecting your containers, the new shiny object. It's about protecting the real valuable assets to your company, which most often do actually end up running on the most outdated software.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what we see a lot.
So we're going to look about how exactly that workload telemetry is sent to Tetration, and then also how that enforcement policy can come back to the sensor, and then we'll go ahead and do some installations of that sensor.
That sounds like a plan.
So when it comes to installing the software agent, you basically have two different flavors that you can choose from. You can see the one on the left-hand side here is the one that I'm going to recommend to you, and I'm going to recommend to you that you would use, which is the agent installer. This one wraps it up into a nice single installation script that deals with ensuring you have all the right dependencies on that workload. It downloads the full package for you, extracts it and installs it, and then goes and does some final cleanup checks. The agent installer really simplifies your life as an end user that's using Tetration, and it's pretty much the go-to way to installing the agent as it is today.
So you're saying that this installer, like, I can choose Windows or Linux, and then I just press enter, and this thing does whatever magic is needed to get the right agent on the server?
Exactly. It's actually going to profile the machine that it's on, work out exactly what operating system that you're using, what version of that operating system is running right now. It's going to check and grab the right version of the package from the Tetration cluster, all in a secure manner, of course, and then it's going to install that right package for you. So it deals with a lot of the complexity of pushing an agent out to many different types of workloads.
Okay. That means I need access to the cluster from the agent, though, right? That's expected.
So you need access to the cluster from the agent in terms of connectivity. But you can actually pass that agent installation script around to administrators if you want, if they don't need to have access to the Tetration cluster or the UI of the cluster to get that installer. The installer is a standalone package that you can actually go and distribute to users in your environment.
Okay, so no need to give a username and password to everyone.
No need to do that.
Very
We'll
good.
talk a little bit later about how the agent itself actually is self-configuring and knows all about the Tetration cluster that it is going to speak to.
Okay.
Now, on the right-hand side here, you can see that we still continue to support a agent package. This is a native package for the operating system. For example, on Linux, we're talking about an RPM. On Windows, we're referring to an MSI installer package here. This is if you have some specific tailored requirements where a package would be more useful to you. Perhaps if you're using some sort of automation to push out a deployment of agents to lots of workloads, and that requires an RPM package.
Very good. So if I have my existing environment, let's say if I don't want to go too far in customizing my deployment process, I can just drop the installation script, the installation package inside it. But does that mean I have to pass a whole set of configuration parameters to the agent package?
No. So the only thing that you really need to do different between the installer and the package itself is you need to tell it exactly what operating system and version of operating system you are using. You download the right package for that particular set of parameters, but you don't have to say what my Tetration cluster is or configure any of that. It works in the same way as the installer, which is that it comes pre-configured with exactly who it's going to be speaking to and what Tetration cluster it's going to use.
Okay. Can someone like use that to connect to another cluster?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So a major part of our security posture is that each agent, whether you're using the agent installer or the agent package, is that it is tied to the titration cluster that it was generated on.
Okay.
We actually include a copy of the root certificate of that titration cluster to make sure that when we bring up and start communicating with that titration cluster, we can validate exactly who we are speaking to.
Great. So that means that basically I have one agent package or installer for my whole organization.
Yes.
Okay.
Very simple.
Perfect. Sounds easy so far.
Still sounds easy enough. I promise it's not going to get too bad. So in terms of what we are requiring you to provide us when we are going to use the installer, not a huge amount. On the Linux side, it's going to be a bash script. So
okay, sounds okay.
Sounds okay. You need to have bash enabled on your Linux workload, which most Linux workloads do have bash there. And on Windows, the installation script is using PowerShell, which again, in most circumstances, PowerShell is available on that workload.
Perfect.
If you are using the agent package version, it's going to be an RPM on Linux. I will note that that's an RPM whether you're using a Debian-based or Red Hat-based version of Linux, and that's because of the way that we sign the RPM package. And then on the MSI side, that's going to be on Windows. So Windows Server or Windows client machines, we're going to be using the MSI package to install that agent.
And so the MSI is signed also, right?
The MSI is also signed by us.
Perfect.
So let's look at this in a little bit more depth. So the Linux enforcement agent, one of my favorite agents.
Linux.
Always start with Linux. We're from the data center. Linux is where we feel comfortable. So when it comes to the support of the OS, I'm not going to read out every single one of these to you, but they pretty much have support for most of the modern flavors of Linux. Anything that has IP tables and IP set pretty much is going to work with us. And you can see we keep the main ones in there, but there are also some more esoteric versions of Linux that we also do support there for certain scenarios.
I see the list is so long it actually goes off the screen. It's like, this is
our
amazing.
support is just never ending, right?
I'd like to see that.
And if you do want to see the complete list, I would definitely recommend you go to the datasheet on cisco.com.
Perfect.
So verify that your agent is supported by the OS. Pretty much like we mentioned, if you're using a relatively modern OS, it will be supported. And then there's a few dependencies that we do require to be on that workload. Now, nearly all of these dependencies should be on a vanilla installation of most Linux versions. That being said, please do make sure that you have all of these installed. Specifically, RPM is a good one to catch. If you are on something like Ubuntu, you will need to make sure that you have RPM installed there.
So from what I've seen, except from IP sets, they're all part of the minimal distribution of every vendor, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it should be fairly standard.
Yes, it's not a huge amount of dependencies that we are going to ask you to pull in. And IP set really is a critical part of how we scalably do enforcement on that workload. So it's a very necessary dependency.
One question, what happens if I don't do dependencies? Is it going to throw me an error to have to fix? Is it going to go through and I have to figure out the problem later?
I mean, you would expect everything to blow up, right? No.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Independence Day style.
So, of course, when we initially execute that installation script, it is going to look at the dependencies that we require, look what is on that workload, and if there is anything missing, it's not just going to steamroll through and try to install it. It is actually going to give you a warning to say, hey, look, I don't think you should install right now because you don't have all of the dependencies. So it's going to help you from avoiding those situations where you might shoot yourself in the foot by not having a dependency there on that workload.
Great, so it does sort of guide me in the right direction.
Yes, yeah. And it's going to call out exactly what dependencies you are missing.
Okay, perfect.
Now, on the Windows side, we can get to Windows. I know you've been waiting for this side. This, again, is pretty much supported from all of the most modern versions of Windows, including a couple that are getting very near to their end of life. Windows 2008 R2 there. And we're keeping up with the latest revisions of Windows Server as well. So you can see this is supported both on Server Core or the desktop version of Windows Server.
Yeah, talk to me a bit more about that, actually, because, I mean, my understanding with the titration is a data center product. So why do we have desktop?
You know, it's an interesting use case, but we found that sometimes the worlds of campus and data center merge, and one of those merging points is virtual desktops. If you are using virtualized desktops, often they are owned and operated by the data center team. So therefore, a lot of those teams would like to apply the same security controls that they are on their servers to those desktops that are hosted inside the data center.
Okay.
So despite the fact that they are client versions of Windows, they are still considered data center assets, and that's that's why we protect them using titration inside the data center.
So the desktop exception applies really only to assets which are VDI based inside the data center, like physically located inside some data center.
Yes. And that's really because part of our model is we don't want you to actually put our software agent on the campus. It doesn't scale that way, and the type of data we're collecting is really important only for the data center workloads. We want visibility and identity from the campus, but you don't need to be putting that Windows agent on your Windows machines in the campus.
Oh, that sounds fair. Plus, I'm guessing when you say desktop, for example, I've heard some customers using industrial automation system that, don't ask me, but run on Windows, have desktop as their for controlling a machine, for example. Does that work as well?
It does, yes.
Great.
You know, there's all of these things that you find that are out in the wild, and it's important to have support for them.
Perfect.
So when it comes to the dependencies for the Windows enforcement agent, there's not a huge amount that you would actually have to go and install on that workload. The only dependency that we will bring with us is npcap. So you don't have to have npcap installed ahead of time. The titration agent is bundled with npcap, and it will install that at install time if necessary. We're going to be using that version 0.991. If you do happen to have an existing version of npcap on that workload already, we are not going to replace that version.
Okay, so you're not going to break anything else?
Yeah, if you have an existing application requiring npcap, we will not do anything to that, but we should be able to work with it as well.
One other question, I see npcap, and I remember in the days of WinPcap, you install WinPcap, and any user on the system could do packet capture. Is that true for npcap as well?
No, in fact, that's one of the many reasons that we use npcap. It is a more modern version of something like WinPcap, and it is not vulnerable to those sort of privilege escalation things that we've seen with the older versions of WinPcap.
Okay, great.
Now, in terms of the other dependencies, these are less dependencies and more configuration state that we require on that Windows device. So obviously you need PowerShell there if you're going to use the installer script. And then because we are going to be using the Windows firewall to enforce those policies, we're going to require that you actually have the Windows firewall switched on.
Okay.
Sounds simple enough, right? But it sometimes can be a gotcha. And we ask you as the end user to explicitly switch that firewall on to make sure that you are comfortable that you're enabling that firewall. And we're also going to require that that firewall is set to switched on for the domain and public profile of that Windows workload.
And so on that, I don't need to configure any rules, right, when I start. I can just come in, enable it, install the agent, and let titration do the rest.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You don't need to configure any rules. You can leave it in the permit any mode, so it's not actually performing any firewalling, but it allows titration to get its hooks in there to go and actually start applying rules later down the line when we get to that point of enabling rules. But yes, fear not. As soon as you install the titration enforcement agent, that doesn't mean everything is going to suddenly start being blocked by that firewall.
Okay, better.
Good.
So we said fear not, I start to be worried. That sounds like the dentist.
They always say that, right? Here, just have some of this. So, exactly how does this agent communicate with the titration cluster? Well, if we're looking at the titration as a service model, there's only going to be one communication path, and that is over port 443. So it's using TCP and TLS to encrypt all of that traffic, so nothing is going to be there unencrypted on the wire. And that means that we don't require any fancy connection between your agents and the titration as a service instance. You don't need VPNs, you don't need tunnels, nothing at all. It could even go over the internet if you really want to. In fact, it will go over the internet.
So I can come and I take a titration as a service instance, I connect on it, it has this some form of way to download an installer, I take the installer, I press enter, this thing goes automatically through internet, connects to the right server, with everything needed and so on. No need for configuration, fancy configuration or anything like that.
No need for any fancy configuration, and most importantly, it will validate that it is speaking to the exact titration cluster that we believe it should be speaking to. So there will be no one that could masquerade as arbitration as a service and receive that telemetry data, or more importantly, push any policies down to you.
I see. And I guess that's why you say TLS interception not permitted?
Exactly. We will not allow TLS interception because that would degrade the security model and potentially allow someone to man in the middle you between your enforcement agent and your titration cluster. So that is why we do not allow that to happen.
Perfect. Okay.
This one I would really recommend that folks look out for because it is an easy gotcha, especially in an enterprise environment where most traffic egressing the data center goes through some type of proxy.
But so that leads to the question, so let's say that I mandate TLS interception usually, and now I want to disable it. Are you capable of giving me some very specific sets of IPs on which I can disable it, or do I have to disable it like for Cisco.com?
No, not Cisco.com. We're going to provide you, when you actually get access to your titration as a service instance, a reasonably short list of IPs that our system will be listening on, and they are the only IPs that you will need to whitelist when you are configuring your proxy bypass.
Okay, so that seems doable.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So that's when we're looking at titration as a service. And if we're looking at the titration on-premises version, it's pretty much a similar sort of model, but there's a couple of different ports that we use. Everything obviously continues to be encrypted. However, we break it up into 3 separate channels. 443 for the control channel, 5640 to send the telemetry data, and 5660 for the enforcement control.
Okay.
From the
3 ports.
3 ports. From the perspective of the end user, again, it's 0 configuration. There is nothing different that you need to configure on the enforcement agent. It already knows exactly what ports it's going to speak on. It knows which titration cluster it is going to communicate with. Again, TLS interception is not permitted because we are validating the certificate of this titration cluster. However, we do break out the telemetry and the enforcement control channel so that you have more control within inside the customer environment when you're deploying titration on premises.
I see. It just struck to my mind when we were talking about that. So this is fully on-prem, right? There's nothing goes to the cloud in that model.
Yes.
I forgot to ask, do you support proxies in TAS? Because obviously, there I'm going to go through a proxy to get out. There's
always a proxy, and yes, we do support proxies.
Okay.
You can configure a HTTPS proxy, and all of the traffic through the control channel is going to go through that HTTPS proxy.
Okay, so proxy, fine, interception, not okay.
Yes.
So it's basically that's the only difference.
Yeah, and there is a distinction. Proxy is supported and allowed, TLS interception not allowed.
Perfect.
Cool.
Cool. And here, again, fully on-prem, the agent, and actually, what happens if the agent is actually not on-prem? And like, let's say the agent is in my VPC in AWS. How does that work?
Fully supported as well. It comes down to how you would like to allow that communication to be permitted. Either you could do it directly over the internet, or if you're using something like a direct connect from your public cloud provider to your on-premises data center, that telemetry will also flow over there. There is absolutely no restriction on where these particular devices or clusters should be.
Okay.
You can have a cluster in a completely different geography talking to agents in another geography.
Okay.
Flexible,
so
right?
Good.
Yeah.
Satellite link supported?
You know, we haven't tried having an agent on the International Space Station yet, though, so
that
we could
would
see.
be a fun try.
Maybe we'll get there someday. They must have workloads that need protecting, right?
I'm pretty sure you do. Hack in space must be interesting.
Yeah, that's a new one. So, downloading the agent itself, let's look at that. Well, it's a very simple process. When you get to your titration cluster, in the top right-hand corner, there is a cog. That cog is going to have an option of agent configuration, and under agent configuration, you will choose software agent download.
Okay.
Sounds simple enough, right?
Sounds logical, I give you that.
Under software agent download, you're going to choose the platform that you're looking at. Today, we're looking at Linux and Windows, although you will see there that there is AIX supported for this installation script. You then choose whether you want it to just be able to perform visibility, or the most preferred agent, which is the enforcement agent, which can get visibility and also enforce policies at the same time.
So that raises a good point. So what should I deploy? Because the problem is that, the relationship between teams. People don't like to have an agent deployed that can actually make a change on a system. So can I deploy the agent enforcement and disable it? Do I need to have the visibility agent? How does that work if I just want to deploy?
So one common misconception is that you need both agents. The deep visibility agent is a subset of the enforcement agent, and the enforcement agent is a completely standalone agent. So you can deploy that, and it has all of the capabilities of deep visibility plus the capability to enforce.
Okay.
So in most circumstances, we recommend customers just deploy the enforcement agent, yet disable the enforcement capability on the cluster side.
Okay, so there is a way to stop enforcement. So this, I can deploy enforcement, but not enable enforcement. So basically, disable the enforcement capability on an agent.
Yes.
Okay.
And this makes it very easy for you to later on down the line transition to enabling that enforcement. Because if you don't do that, you might have to go back and ask the end user or the application developer to switch out the deep visibility agent for the enforcement agent.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're planning ahead, if you think that you're going to get to enforcement eventually, I would recommend you go and install the enforcement agent, then disable the feature at the cluster level.
Okay. Can I selectively disable, or it's like all or nothing across the cluster?
You can absolutely selectively disable.
Perfect.
You can do it on a per workload basis all the way to thousands of workloads at a time. It's a very flexible configuration model for what is enabled or disabled on a given agent.
Okay.
So we can get our agent, we'll get our installer script. Our installer script is going to come in either a shell script on Linux or the PowerShell script on Windows. And then what can we do from there? Well, on the Linux side, we simply copy the script to the workload that we want to enable that agent on, and then we call the installer script. Paying attention to the fact that we executed that with sudo there, which gave us root level privileges, you must be root to install this agent. Once the agent is installed, like we were talking about earlier, it is hitless. It doesn't require any kernel modules, it doesn't require any reboots, and it's going to make sure that it does all of its pre-checks. So firstly, we'll test the dependencies, detect the operating system. We're then going to reach out securely to the titration cluster and make sure that we download the right package for that workload. We're then going to extract the configuration files. You can see there that we have a configuration file already present. And we're going to extract the sensor package, which will be signed. And then finally, it's going to verify that package. You can see on the left-hand side there, verifying the package. And then finally, it will go ahead and install the sensor and do a couple of cleanup tasks. So by the end, once you see all tasks are done, you will know at that point that that agent has been successfully installed on that workload.
So I see, so that's what you were talking about when you say we check for dependencies. So if I miss anything of that, you're going to tell me, hey, go fix.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'll give you a nice list of exactly what you need to fix.
That sounds good.
So that's all you have to do on the Linux side to install an agent.
Okay.
Now we can take a look at Windows, which is going to hopefully be just as simple. The only difference on Windows is that you must firstly say set execution policy unrestricted.
Okay.
This is because you've downloaded a script from the internet, and that script, Microsoft is going to try to protect you from that script, but in this case we can trust that script and we're going to say yes, you're allowed to execute that script. So you can see that we call the titration installer PowerShell script. It's going to say run, would you like to run? And we say yes, we will run once. And then again, it is going to go through and do the dependency tests, detect the OS, and then finally go ahead and download the right package over the secure channel again. And then finally, it will go ahead and, one more here, install the sensor.
Okay.
And you can see at the bottom left-hand side there, when it says installing titration agent, installation is done, all tasks are done, you will have that agent available for you there.
Okay. So far seems simple.
So far seems simple. I will mention that during the checks on the Windows side, it is going to do some checks around the firewall to make sure that you have the firewall enabled and that it's not configured in the wrong state.
So when you say not configured in the wrong state, you mean that if my system is managed by group policy objects in some shape or form, I just need to make sure that I've accounted for that when I prepared.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like we said, one of the dependencies is that the firewall is enabled, but it is not controlled by GPO.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we would do to get the agent installed, both on Linux and Windows. So how about we switch to a demonstration and actually go do this live on some of our machines.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's take a look at how we can install the agent on the Windows platform. So I have a Windows workload available to me here right now, and we can see that we are connected to our cluster and that there is 0 agents installed.
Okay.
So the first thing that we're going to want to do is pop up to the right-hand corner here and come to agent config, which will let us download the software agent. So we'll choose agent config and then select software agent download. And under there, we'll see the options available to us to download those software agents, both Linux, Windows, and most recently, we have support for the AIX platform as well.
Was about time.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, half the world seems to continue to run on legacy software. You'll also see in the top right-hand corner here, there is the Show Classic agent packages. So, that's where if you would like to go and download that RPM or the MSI installer, you'll find them listed underneath that section of the UI.
So if I'm going to things like automation with Ansible or System Center or all that stuff, Show Classic pack, and I don't want to do too much effort.
And you don't want to do too much effort. You'll come here, say Show Classic Packages, and it's going to give you this list of everything that you might want to install. But I'm going to come back to the installers. I will choose Windows, and then I will choose the Enforcement agent. And that's going to show me the Download Installer option there, and I will click that.
So before you go further, let you press keep, it's okay.
It's okay.
But before you go further, I see AIX here, so are you telling me that AIX is the same deployment model? So despite, legacy is probably a bit too harsh towards AIX, but you're saying that the AIX has the same modern installer as Linux and Windows, same process, absolute same.
Exactly the same process. You only need to learn that one process to get that agent installed, no matter what platform that you're going to install it on.
That's pretty cool. Do you mind just clicking on AIX? I'm curious to see.
And you'll see here, just like there was for Windows, if you scroll down below, there's a complete set of steps as to how you would install this agent on AIX, and also exactly how you can go ahead and verify that agent has been installed on that workload. Pretty nice. So while we could play around with AIX, let's get down to the business with Windows.
Yeah, we were not fair to Windows. Let's do Windows. Yeah. You were not fair to Windows.
Not always, but today I will be. So the first thing that we're going to do is change to our Downloads folder. And then we're going to set our execution policy. This will allow us to execute the titration script. We'll make sure that we choose unrestricted for this, not undefined. We'll say yes to that particular one.
So just to clarify, the unrestricted is only because you're actually downloading that from our internet, in our case, in there. If you were not doing that, you would not need to do that. Yeah,
this is just simply because it's a script that's coming from the internet, and Microsoft requires that you explicitly acknowledge that you want to execute that script.
I mean, that sounds fair. Security before all.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and execute this installation script and see exactly what happens. So we'll hit enter. We get a security warning, which, as always, when you get a security warning, you just keep mashing yes.
Yeah.
We say run once.
They put R this time, not...
And you can see it failed. Did I make a mistake?
Local firewall for domain profile is off. Enforcement might fail. Did you forget something by chance?
Yeah, knowing me, I probably did forget something. So let's go take a look at our domain profile. I can find my mouse down here. We will bring up our Network and Sharing Center, head over to the Windows Firewall on the bottom left. If we take a look at the Turn Windows Firewall on or off section, yes, it is basically saying that we don't have the firewall enabled on any of those networks, and because we want to protect our domain network here, we're going to say turn on Windows Firewall.
Okay. And I guess clicking below is a bad idea, right?
Yes, well, as you can see, right now there's those checkboxes for blocking all incoming active connections. We're going to avoid clicking that one in this case because we don't want to start dropping any traffic. We just simply want to enable the firewall so Titration can take control of it later. So let's select OK to that one.
And by the way, everything you're doing there, I could do it through GPO, group policy objects, if I wanted to.
Yes, you could do.
Okay.
And then finally, we can re-execute that script again. We will say run once, one more time, and it's going to go through the process of downloading the software agent, which it is ensuring that it has the right signature for that software agent. It's going to download it, it will verify it, extract it, and finally install it. So let's just watch the process.
So just to be clear, you're seeing this at the bottom, but actually the action is actually at the top. So just if you're in front, not that you're, damn, nothing is working there yet.
Yeah.
Look here.
I know, it's just a game to move it up to the top so that you have something to look at while you wait for it to download.
Okay.
So it's downloaded that agent. You can see that it's created a folder in program files called Cisco Titration, which is where you will find all of the agent installation files, or the installed agent, I should say, plus the log files will be there as well in case you want to look at them later.
Okay.
It's going to run through the installation right now. You might see a couple of things pop up on the screen as it goes through that final installation, and then you'll get a success message at the end.
We hope.
We always hope in these situations.
As usual, God of beer, God of demo,
God of demos.
beer. So yeah, reverse those two, but okay. Okay, so and everything's taken care from you about there, even like npcap installation, any configuration, anything I need is actually taken care of.
Yep. As you can see,
Pop up.
I didn't have to put any details about the Titration cluster I'm connecting to, the tenant I am part of on that cluster. I didn't have to specify anything about this agent itself or how I'm going to install it. It just simply knew all of that by the fact that that agent came from that cluster and it was pre-customized already.
Okay.
You can see that the Titration agent has been installed, all tasks are done, and that it's hopefully now checking into our Titration cluster.
It didn't say success, Tim.
Well, it says installation is done, which is success in my world.
Okay,
So
okay. I'll give you that.
let's pop over here. We can look at our software agents config panel again and look underneath software agents. And we can see quite correctly that pod 02 WinServer 1, which is this particular device, has just started checking in. It just literally checked in a few seconds ago, and we can see that we're ensuring that it is up to date with the latest version of software.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Now, my question on that, you just deploy an agent, you turned on enforcement. So is this thing enforcing right now?
So that's a good question, and you can check that by looking at this agent and going to its workload profile, and you can see exactly what has been configured. You'll see right now it's just learning a little bit of information about that agent because we most recently enabled it, but you will see because it is applying the default set of configuration, on the left-hand side there where it says enforcement, there is a X next to that, which means we are not going to enforce any policies or start dropping any traffic.
Great, so visibility mode active here, no enforcement, and would that be the default if I was to bring up my new system?
Yes, that is the default mode that we run it in, and you have to explicitly start enabling enforcement to have that firewall taken control of.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
So we covered a Windows installation of the Titration agent. Now let's take a look at how we would do this using the installer script on a Linux workload.
That would be nice.
So we can move away from from our Windows device and come over to one of my Linux workloads here. I've gone through exactly the same process as we did for Windows to download that installation script. I've copied that installation script to this workload already. So if we just check here, we see that there is a shell script called tet in this case, and we've made sure to add the executable bit to the privileges on that so that we can execute it.
Do you mind just showing which command did you use to set the exec bit, just in case?
I did
forget?
chmod +x tet.sh.
Okay.
You will see in your environment the name of the installation will be longer and it will have your tenant name baked into that installation script. So I did that to make sure that I can execute that on Linux.
Okay.
And then let's see about installing it. So the first thing that we can do is go ahead and try running this.
You're on Linux now.
See, and what's going to happen here? Well, like we saw on Windows, it requires root level privileges or administrator level privileges. So we will go ahead and run this as root.
I would have been a little worried if you were able to install a package without root access. So.
You need root access, but you don't need to install any kernel modules like we mentioned. You don't need to reboot the machine. And once the agent is installed on there, you won't need to ask for root access again. It's just simply on that initial installation of the agent.
Sounds fair.
So we'll run that. It is going to go through the same list of checks. Downloaded the software agent, and there we go. It is now running on this workload.
That was fast.
Yeah, it was a little bit faster. There's less dependencies to install. There's libpcap already available on this workload, so we don't have to install an npcap driver.
Pretty cool. So that's on a Linux. I see U18, so I'm guessing Ubuntu.
Yes.
Ubuntu. 1804, okay. Oh, pretty cool.
It detected that we were on Ubuntu, it detected the version of Ubuntu, and then it downloaded the right agent and installed that agent. And now if we come back to our titration cluster one more time, we will be able to take a look at that. So we'll refresh this page. We'll see that there are now 2 enforcement agents.
A grand total of 2 agents? That much?
A highly scalable titration system supporting 2 enforcement agents at the same time.
Amazing.
And when we click through to that, we'll actually pop over to our agent config screen here. It's just starting to populate some of that data, seeing as we just installed those agents recently. We'll see here that, yes, node 1 has also been enabled. We can see that it's detected that it's Ubuntu, that it recently checked in, and that it is enabled with the 3322 enforcer version here.
So just to clarify, the message, like there were those kind of suitcases on that previous page, that's just a thing like because there was no agents before, there's some agents now, it's just a refresh thing.
Exactly, that information is aggregated over 15 minutes, and because of the fact that we haven't had agents installed for 15 minutes, it's just waiting for data to fill in.
Okay, so nothing to be worried about, like you just wait a bit, it shows up.
Nothing to worry about in this case.
Okay, as long as it's here.
As long as it's here, it's sending data, and we'll start to see flows coming into the system. We'll start to see it populating with information from these 2 new workloads.
Sounds good.
That was it.
Okay, nothing else?
Nothing else for today on this one.
I'm slightly disappointed. I mean, I thought you would have much more typing to do.
You wanted it to be more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, like geek style.
You want a CCIE on installing the titration agent?
I thought so.
Unfortunately, my friend, today it was just going to be executing 2 scripts. But what are we going to do?
Okay. Very nice, anyway.
Okay. Well, that was a nice and simple demonstration of that, and we'll wrap up there. So thank you for joining us in this module of the titration video series. If you would like more information about titration, please go to cisco.com/go/titration.